So CyberConnect 2 just came out with a new Storms game, and there's a lot about it that looks very good. I always saw Ultimate Ninja Storm as a solid video game series. Its retelling of the Naruto manga, its gameplay, its cool graphics. I stopped playing after 3, admittedly, but I still watch other people play 4. Even before then, I still got memories of going on YouTube and just watching all of the cool characters' ultimate moves before I even got the game myself. Now, you've read the title, seen the thumbnail. In this video, I want to share with you what a Rwby game made by CyberConnect 2 could possibly look like. Could it be as successful and fun as Ultimate Ninja Storm? Well, why don't we step into our imagination box and find out? Oh, Jesus. By the way, I know the chances of this actually happening is very non-existent, but hey, a little fun, why not? Before we get into the game's story and online ideas, I think the most important thing to start with is, of course, the gameplay. I mean, if the game doesn't play well, not a lot of people are gonna buy it, outside of, hardcore Rwby fans. This combat's gotta be fun and fresh for Rwby. Now, I'm not gonna pretend to be an expert in making games. I'm not a game developer at all, so a lot of how I talk might end up making me sound dumb, but I'll give it a shot anyways. Naruto Ninja Storm's gameplay has players fighting in arena-style matches with at most 2 support characters in a 3-dimensional environment. Players would fight with combos unique to each character. They'd also have access to items that would help them in their fights. With Ultimate Ninja, most characters' fighting styles were hand-to-hand, but the characters are still unique because they all had different ways of fighting. They also had their special moves and their ultimate moves, but we'll get to that in a second. Now, uniqueness is not something Rwby would have to worry about. The biggest thing about the show are their characters' unique weapons. Rwby's scythe handling abilities are going to be very different from Winter's dual sword fighting, and players will easily be able to see that through the characters' unique combos. Combos were a big part of the Storm series, and it's one of the things that had helped the series stay alive for so long. I mean, the fighting in Rwby already looks like a video game, especially when Monty was in charge of the fighting, so it's not hard to imagine all the different unique combos players would be able to use with each character. Not only because of the different weapons, but also the different semblances. People would be able to combine regular weapon attacks with semblances. For example, you could have Rwby doing a simple scythe combo and then add some semblance moves on top of that in order to keep your opponent stunned and give off more damage. We will definitely be talking about semblances in a second, but I just wanted to help you guys picture that sort of combat. Of course, we'll also be able to do long range. For one thing, it seems like every weapon in Rwby is also a gun, but on top of the normal movesets, players would have access to extra items to help with their fight like in Storm. But instead of ninja tools, we could have different dust shooting out of the character's guns. Fire creates explosions, ice makes characters slower, electricity stuns them. There would also be health packs, maybe in the shape of like cute little Rwby foods in order to bring your health back. Each item would only be usable once, just so players don't feel tempted to spam. Going back to the semblances, in Ninja Storm, a lot of the characters had unique abilities taken from episodes of the show. Naruto with his shadow clones or Rasengan, Sasuke with fireball jutsu and Chidori, and so on and so forth. In order to put these abilities in the game, not only do they sneak some of these moves in the combos, but they also gave each character a super move as well as an ultimate move. The regular jutsus are usually used by pressing the top button on your controller, triangle or Y, and then the right button, circle or B. That's your special move. You could just tap the B button to do a simple jutsu, or some attacks allow you to hold the B button in order to make the attack stronger. These single tap special moves, I'll call them, come in real handy if you want to quickly hit your opponent with a strong move or combine a powerful attack with your regular button matching skills. Rwby would be the same. These single tap moves could activate a quick move related to the character's semblance, or even their weapon. Rwby's single tap move could be heard turning into a cloud of roses and slamming into her opponent. Or it could be heard throwing her scythe like a spinning disc of death. Weiss's could be sending shards of ice at her opponent, or it could be summoning a Borbotusk and sending it charging at her opponent. Once again, and it probably won't be the last time I say this, Rwby has a unique cast of characters with unique movesets. So game developers could have a bunch of fun coming up with unique and interesting moves, creating different favorite characters for each player. Now we have the single tap attacks, but that's not all. No, because we have the popularist, most showboaty and spectacularly part of the whole game, double tap attacks, or ultimate moves. These are the moves you'll find on YouTube. The videos that will be like 30 minutes long and with all good amounts of views because, like I said, they're just entertaining to watch. When these moves are activated, the player is taken out of the fight for a few seconds, and it's where they'll be shown a little cutscene of their character doing some spectacle over-the-top move against the opponent they're facing. This does a lot of things. It gives the player a moment to get their shit together, it deals a good amount of damage to their opponents, and it's also just really cool to watch. Now, these ultimate attacks are rarely attacks that you'll actually see in the actual show. I mean, when I say they go over the top, they go over the top. But that's honestly kind of part of the fun, you know? I remember when these Storm games were coming out and I was just a wee little lad and I didn't have the money to just go out and buy the game right when it came out. So I'd sit down and watch a big compilation video showing every character's ultimate move, which was a lot of fun. With character semblances and weapons and magic, it could easily be the same for Rwby. You could have something crazy, like Rwby turning into a giant rose petal tornado, or Yang in her semblance state, crashing into her opponent and creating a giant explosion, or Blake creating multiple shadows of herself, each one infused with dust, ending with a giant multicolored explosion, or Salem sending a big magic beam before summoning multiple Grim and having them drag your opponent into a Grim pool. You can be really creative with it. Finally, we have something called the Awakenings. These are basically temporary transformations that players can activate when their character is near death. Now I say transformations, but these awakenings honestly range from something as small as blue energy surrounding your character, those are the least interesting awakenings to be fair, to actual transformations characters unlock in the show. But even the visually less interesting transformations help in a fight because when you're in your awakened state, your character would get a whole new moveset and the hits would be a lot harder. So for example, Rwby's awakening could visually just be rose petals falling around her, but when you attack, instead of the usual movesets, she might have more attacks that have her turn into rose petals. Another example would be Hazel. Maybe his regular form would be him with a few dust shards sticking out of him, like fire, ice, and rock, while his awakening form could be him with more unique dust sticking out of him, like gravity, light, electricity. A more visually crazy awakening could be Yang with her semblance activated, or the Hound growing wings and you getting to fly a little bit. This could also affect the character's one-tap move, their special move, giving them a whole new one while in that awakened state. I actually wrote down some other examples. I have Oscar turning into Ospen Oscar, maybe making him faster, Watts with his rings, maybe his base form is just him with his gun, but then when he's awakened, he's able to use his wings for like shield and maybe a shield toss. Sun, of course, would be Gunchucks, Weiss, the armor summon, Raven, maybe Maiden Raven, same thing for Cinder and Penny. So finally, with the gameplay, just really quick, we got to talk about the team mechanics. In Ninja Storm 4, players were finally able to switch between their 3 selected players mid-battle. Before, characters had the chance to choose 2 support characters to go with their main character when playing in battle mode. However, back then, that's all those characters were, support. You can summon them when their gauge was full, and they'd attack your opponent with their one-tap special move. But that's it, you couldn't play as them during the fight. When Storm 4 came, that changed, and players were able to also switch between their 3 characters. Focusing on Rwby, if you had, let's say, Ruby Rose, Ironwood, and Crow, you would be able to switch between those 3 whenever you want. Also, if you had compatible characters, you could unlock an ultimate move team attack. So yeah, just thought I'd quickly mention that. Team attacks are important in Rwby, so getting to see how you could combine characters' attacks as well as getting to see a cool cutscene full of teamwork would make sense to put in the game. So the main story would be a retelling of the show, meaning the player will be able to relive iconic moments while fighting the same villains that the girls fought throughout the series. The format of the fights would be similar to what I mentioned before, and you get to play as multiple different characters throughout the story mode. switching to whatever character the story has you be. I imagine there would be at least 3 kinds of fights. Small grunt fights, so this is when the story mode has you fight the Grim or the White Fang. Here you'd be going up against more than one of these grunt characters. The second kind of fighting is the standard fighting. So this is when you'd be going up against known characters. An example would be Yang versus Mercury, Blake versus Torchwick on the train, Pyrrha versus Cardin. These fights would be a lot like the battle mode, a little harder than grunt fights, but nothing flashy. The final kind of fights would be the boss battles. Now this will be fun because there's a lot more bells and whistles that really get the players hyped up while they're playing. There would probably be 2 kinds of boss battles. The first would follow more of the standard format, one-on-one in a 3D battle stage. This would be for fights like Cinder versus Pyrrha, because that would definitely be a boss battle fight in the game. A fight like this would start off normally, but like many boss battles, there would be different stages. So maybe the fight would start inside Ozpin's office, but then we'd switch it up and have Cinder maybe perch herself somewhere high and start shooting flaming glass towards you, and you have to dodge them as you try and find a way to get her back down. Or maybe when the tower gets blown apart, you could have Cinder bring a bunch of big fireballs down, or maybe send like a bunch of fire tornadoes towards the player. Because this is a boss battle, it'll definitely be more grand than it was in the actual series, just to keep it interesting and fun. The second kind of boss battle would be for the more unorthodox villains and situations. So like when the characters go up against Big Grim, like the Nevermore, instead of the standard one-on-one fight, you might need to do a boss battle that focuses more on long range and platforming to get to the Big Grim. I feel like with boss battles like this, because the Grim will be different and the environment as well, each one, or at least the majority, can be really unique and intense for the player. But what would connect these 2 kind of boss battles? Quick time events. I loved the quick time events in the Storm games. Not only do they keep the player engaged while basically watching a cutscene, but the games would take fights from the anime or manga and do their own thing. With that hindsight and chances for new ideas, I can see fights like the Aesops versus Rwby or Ranger versus the Knuckleby getting quick time events that change how that fight got from point A to point B, maybe even improve them. Alright, so getting to play with recognizable characters and getting to go head to head with recognizable villains is great. But you know something else fans would definitely like to do? Actually explore Remnant. Walk through recognizable locations like the streets of Mantle. Explore the highs and lows of Menagerie. Maybe even look around Haven. See spots that we only got glimpses of in the show. Something CyberConnect 2 put in their Storm games, and in Kakarot though, to be fair, a lot bigger in Kakarot, was an open world. And I'm sure a lot of people would love to experience that with Remnant and all of its iconic places. Now granted, the open world in Storm games wasn't this big space where you can travel for miles in every kind of direction. Instead, it was pretty restricted. But still, in this small open world, people were, like I said, getting to go to known locations, interact with different characters, and complete small side quests for some rewards. Each arc of the game would unlock new areas. So the Beacon arc would have, of course, Beacon, the City of Vale, maybe the Island Patch. As we go through the rest of the arcs, Haven, Atlas, and the Ever After, more places would be unlocked. Now, as someone who watches the show knows, the heroes kinda leave a mess now and then after an arc is done. Beacon and Atlas are no more. Spoilers. Now, say you finish an arc but you didn't get to complete all of the side quests. It'd be pretty shitty if once you finish the Beacon arc, you can't go back to finish what you started. So after an arc is done and the story sends you to the next kingdom, I would definitely make it where you're still able to fast travel back to the previous kingdom, which would, when you get there, continue to look the same as if nothing happened. So in a way, that section would remain outside of the story mode, allowing players to go back to places like Beacon and do whatever side quests they need to do there. Of course, same thing with Atlas. After finishing that part of the main story, instead of the place just being rubble, Atlas would still be in the sky, Mantle will still be below as well. The side quests I mentioned could range from puzzles to locating objects to going out and fighting a horde of Grim or bandits. Known characters like members of Team Juniper, the shopkeeper, hell, even Junior would be spread out across the different maps and be waiting to give you these different side quests that would differ in difficulty. Different quests would give you different rewards, cash, items, costumes, maybe even characters, so they're worth your time. When would you use these rewards, you may ask? Well, of course, one of the answers is the story mode, but that's not all. Because while that aspect of the game is important, I don't think it was the story mode that kept the Storm games alive. Rather, it was the versus mode, the battle mode. This lets you play from the large selection of playable characters, and, well, you get to fight other players. You can find your main that you'll always stick with, or go through each character and play with the different and unique moves. You can play by yourself or online with other Rwby fans. And just thinking about that, that's probably the best part of it, isn't it? Online would definitely be a bunch of fun, and definitely not toxic at all. Regardless, with things like rankings and, I don't know, tournaments, that kind of stuff will definitely keep the game playable, which would give it longevity. I personally feel like there are many characters you can use for this game. Maybe characters like the gods and the shopkeeper would be pretty hard to make playable, but even small characters like Junior could be playable. Young Marie, Old Marie, the Malachi twins. The Malachi twins, they could probably be like 2 characters in one. There's a wide selection of heroes and villains and side characters to choose from. On top of that, we also have the matter of multiple versions of the same character. The Storm game had more than one version of Naruto and Sasuke and I think Sakura? These different versions could have a different outfit or a different special and ultimate move, even a different awakenings, making them their own character. If we just focus on Team Rwby, these characters have definitely changed over the years. They've changed outfits, fighting styles, their semblances have evolved. This opens up the possibility of giving them different versions of themselves in the game. So maybe the Beacon Weiss can focus on glyphs, while the Haven Weiss focuses more on summoning. Beacon Rwby can have an ultimate that focuses on a bunch of different scythe attacks, while Atlas Ruby's cutscene focuses more on her silver eyes. And yes, I know silver eyes don't affect regular humans. You have her like shoot a big blast of white light just to confuse her enemy maybe. With each iteration of the character also comes the outfit that they wore during that arc, which I think would definitely be a lot of fun. It won't just be Team Rwby, of course, who gets these different versions. Juniper, Mercury, Emerald, Penny could have like a Beacon version and an Atlas version, where the Atlas version is where she's able to use her maiden powers, a Farm Boy Oscar and an Ozma Oscar. I bet you guys are already knowing who your mains would be. For me, it will most likely be between Winter or Sun. Winter for 2 reasons. Her double swords fighting style just feels the most comfortable for me. That plus her summoning and probably Maiden Awakening. The second reason, it's pretty obvious. Now when it comes to Sun, there are also 2 things. One are those gun chucks. You know the combos with those would just feel satisfying. The second reason, hey, she's got it. Now these are inevitable. If this game is successful, CyberConnect 2 is gonna want to keep it going as long as possible. And believe it or not, there are some things out there that can make that possible. For starters, with the release of Ice Queendom comes the potential for a DLC side story, one that takes place and has you play through the story of this AU story. The DLC would most likely come with the outfits the girls wore while in the nightmare, as well as the new character Xion. We didn't get much of their abilities in a combat situation, but with that giant Dreamcatcher staff and the dream abilities and the string manipulation, I think there's a lot that they can work with gameplay wise. Speaking of what they can work with, just imagining what they would do with the Ice Queendom story, getting to play in Weiss's Nightmare and going through the story like Team Rwby did, maybe a little bit quicker than Team Rwby did, maybe a little less repetition. We could get to participate in crazy fights like Evil Blake versus Evil Weiss, or big boss battles like Yang versus that giant mech, or Rwby versus the Nightmare's final form. As for the open world, it would of course be Weiss's Nightmare. Another DLC I had in mind, which honestly I kind of doubt would happen, would be the Justice League and Rwby crossover. I don't know if Rwby has to get DC's permission, they might, and I don't know if DC would ever allow it. But besides the story mode, we would be getting Justice League version characters in this game, as well as Rwby's costumes in part 2. By the way, I would love for all of these to be free, because, you know, we kind of already paid for the game, but you know how it is. Most likely there's gonna be a charge because money. So that's basically it. I'll be honest, while making this what if, even though I don't expect this game to ever exist, I think similar to when I made the Lego Doctor Who what if, I just really want this game to happen after just thinking about it for a little while. I mean, I just think that this would be an amazing game if the studio really puts its heart into it. And I know that, like, you know, Rwby, while it is growing in popularity, it's not up there with like Naruto or Demon Slayer or whatever new game they're coming out with, Dragon Ball Z. So there is that less of an incentive to, you know, give a shit when making this game, I guess. But I mean, it's a gold mine. I feel like there's just so much potential with the open world, with the different ultimates, the awakenings, all that stuff. The gameplay, I think, would kill if it was done right. And even people who aren't fans of Rwby, like people who haven't even heard of Rwby, or they've seen, like, you know, Monty's fights and that's about it. Like, I don't know if it would bring them into the show, but I think if they see the gameplay and the gameplay is good, they'll be like, oh shit, maybe I'll check it out, and then they'll get to, you know, learn about the story through the game, and then maybe they'll continue watching the story. Who knows? I just think this would definitely do a lot of good. But like I said, I kind of doubt it's ever gonna happen. But that's basically it. I'm just gonna go back to hoping that Volume 10 gets greenlit. Until then, I'll just probably make some Volume 10 theory videos and some breakdowns and thoughts videos about previous volumes and stuff like that. I definitely want to go back to making Rwby content, even if the show isn't coming back anytime soon, because Rwby is still a lot of fun to talk about. So yeah, tell me what you guys thought about this episode down in the comment section down below. Thank you if you guys watched all the way through. Tell me who your mains would be and what you would want them to, I guess, have. What kind of gaming mechanics would you want that character to have? And that's about it. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys next time. Until then,